we are coming already towards the end of this online conference on Walk the Talk, Faith-Driven Investing with a focus on Asia. And we have heard in this day already a lot of very encouraging examples, reflections, analysis, challenges, opportunities on faith-driven investing, and especially in Asia. And now we come to 3 concrete examples of how this happens. My name is Christoph Zuckerberger. As I said at the beginning of this conference, I'm director of the Geneva Agape Foundation, the coordinating foundation of this coalition of 5 organizations around this who carry this online conference. And we have as first speaker Joy Cadangen from the Philippines, but also from Geneva. She is member of the board of Oikosinvest. And I say 2 words about Oikosinvest. Oikosinvest is a new foundation we created in Geneva. I'm the president. She's a board member. You are a board member. And we are receiving applications for financial support, I mean investments in projects. So also for the others in this conference, this will be an instrument where you can apply for investment capital, equities and loans, but we are still in the process of establishing this foundation. So we will be ready in a few months to take first decisions on investments. Now, Joy Cadangen presents a project which is under the applicants. So you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Christoph. Good afternoon, Asia. I am Joy Cadangen from the Philippines, now working in Geneva, Switzerland. I thank all the speakers for their very insightful presentations. You are all sources of inspiration to the work that we do. So from the global perspective that was discussed this morning, let us now go to the ground and see how we can walk the talk. I am presenting a case where impact investing can be done through faith-based persons. So in this project, there are 4 major players. And the first one is the Nehemiah Homeowners Association. It is an association created by like-minded persons who wish to provide decent housing for themselves and their friends. They are located in a land where indigenous people come from, and so priority is given to indigenous peoples in this project. The association took its name in honor of Governor Nehemiah of the Holy Bible. If you know Nehemiah's story, he was a politician with incredible leadership style. He had 0 tolerance to corruption and had walked the talk, even had run the talk, when he mobilized his people to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. I am quoting the gentleman from the Geneva government who said this morning that we should actually run the talk and not walk the talk. In the case of Governor Nehemiah, he actually did that. So further on Nehemiah, he did not claim from the poor the taxes that was due to him, and he did many more good things. It is worth to note that he was a politician, not a religious leader, but his faith had driven him to do a lot of good works. It is because of this inspiration that the Nehemiah Association had named this association to him. They wanted to follow his style and they wanted to follow his principles in their running the project. So the speaker from Unyapak mentioned that Mr. Yunus must have had a great faith to create microlending as a tool to help the poor. It is also the same with this association. They are not a religious association, but they are, at the moment, they are all Christians, and their faith had driven them to do good to their members and to the whole community as a whole. The association will make sure that they will create impact by employing technology, such as solar powers in the housing project. They will do effective waste management and will protect and respect the environment. The second major player is an investor or partner. It's called Oikosinvest. And as far as Nehemiah Association is concerned, they are looking up to them to be a partner in this project. So at this point in time, they are just an applicant. Nothing is final. So as Christoph had said this morning, Oikosinvest is a new NGO in Geneva. It had committed itself to put its fund to high impact projects. The third major player in this project is a government agency in the Philippines called Pag-ibig. It is the government's arm which is mandated to provide decent housing to the Filipino working class and to provide a tool to its members to have a saving mechanism other than banks. The fourth major player, which is the most important, are the beneficiaries, who are also members of both Nehemiah Association and Pag-ibig. So in this screen, you can see that Nehemiah intends to partner with Oikosinvest as a creditor or partner. They would want to borrow money from them to build houses and to use this money for the members. So after the houses are built, the members will take a loan from Pag-ibig to pay these houses. Pag-ibig will then have to do their own diligence review. In fact, they will do it before this project will start, and they will just do a final review after the houses are ready to be turned over. So when they are happy, meaning Pag-ibig, with the houses and the status of their member, they will pay the cost of the house to the Nehemiah Association. Nehemiah will then pay its dues to Oikosinvest. So it is foreseen that the partnership between Pag-ibig and the members in Nehemiah would last for 30 years because this loan would have a life of about 30 years. The partnership with Nehemiah and Pag-ibig will also be that long because they have the same members. One impact that is seen that will come from this project is the possibility of Nehemiah to be able to influence the policies and regulations of the government with regards to housing and other matters. They will be working together for the next 30 years, so they will share the same challenges and successes. This is also true with Pag-ibig, with being able to influence the policies of Nehemiah as a private entity. Mr. Anis Asgar this morning spoke about having to improve regulatory structures and regulations in Asia so that investors would be able to run and really do good work. And I think this might be one of the possibilities to do that. So again, finally, in terms of impact, Nehemiah dreams to make this project as a model in terms of leadership, in terms of respecting the environment, using technology, and in the financial structure. They are not yet aware of a structure that a non-banking facility had supported a housing project and had passed it on to the government. In this case, as of the moment, all their experiences in the Philippines on housing project is that either it was funded by banks or financial institutions and then went on to Pag-ibig. In this case, the Nehemiah is hoping that this new model will be introduced and will be successful and will create more impact, especially on cost. So my presentation has now ended. If you have questions, I am happy to answer. If I cannot answer, Christoph will answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy Cadangen. It's an interesting model of, we could even call it PPP, private-public partnership, because the plan would be, or the project construction to have private investors, in this case a foundation, but then in cooperation with government entities, and then of course the private beneficiaries. I think that shows as a model the question of governance, of structures, of regulations, but also of innovation with private initiatives. And I think that is a topic that we heard in several presentations today, how to link these different actors together, which of course needs values and faith and trust, which is not an easy but a very promising part. So thank you. We will come back to the questions then after the three presentations. The next presentation is Nawang Kunphel from Ladak, North India, and as you see, Nawang, he comes from a cold area, minus in the night and a bit warmer in the day. And you are a monk, a Buddhist monk from Tibetan Buddhism. And it's interesting, a very concrete, also grassroots project of this, of your monastery and your community of Tibetan Buddhist monks. You have the floor.
First of all, I would like to convey my greetings to all who are participating over here, and also to all those who have initiated such a wonderful platform where people can come up with the different ideas, with the different projects, to literally help the humanity in many different ways. So here today, before I talk a bit on the objectives of and the project that I have, I just thought to say, like, as a monk, why I'm coming up with such a project. So my project is actually, as you can see over here, is Pennees row, is perennial trees growing for life. And then the reason why I come up with such an project is that in the last few years, as we all know, that because of the climate change, because of the rise of global warming, there was lots and lots of destructions. That there are lots and lots of stay sad things that has happened. For example, the fire in Amazon fire, and also Australian, as we all know. So my project is that as a Buddhist monk, I see a huge need. We always pray that may all the sentient beings, may every living beings be happy and have all the causes to be happiness. But now here, I'm not just, with some project to help, 100,000 people or few village or this and that, but in a bigger scale, I see that the world really needs a bit. We all need to wake up, because there are things which is going a bit sad. The global warming, is literally rising, in a bit of rapid pace, and then all the glaciers are melting down, and then the sea level is rising, and then we have not only these 6, 7, or 8 billion human beings, but also the billions and billions of animals which we share the same earth. For all of us, we need a proper condition to live. If the global warming, if the temperature of the world rise, if the sea level rise, if those glaciers melt down, then maybe for the next few generations, it will really be difficult, not only for those poor animals, but also even for humans. So to try to avoid the further harms, to try to heal the world, to try to heal the planet that we are living, I think there is a huge need to step on and to do something before it's too late. As we all know, that scientists has given an estimation of about 2.3 million animals which has been died or hurted during the Amazon fire. And even in Australia, like bushfire, there was last time it was about the scientists again given the estimation of 3 billion animals have been hurted or killed. It's not just that, but then in a small place in Ladak, we have this, in around 2010, we have this cloud burst, and then many villages has been washed away literally by the flood caused by the cloud burst. And that's something which no one has heard from like hundreds of years. No one who is living right now have never heard such thing. So when we see a huge change in the climate, then and at the same time, the change of climate affects a lots and lots of people at the same time, a lots and lots of animals, And then if this continues, if this the climate, the pace that the climate is getting worse, if this pace continues, then maybe after like few decades, many of the island that we enjoy, many of the island where people habitate, people live, might be under the water. So because of those few reasons, I and my team come up with this project called perennial trees growing for life. And then the one and only way to sustain the climate, recover the planet, to balance this global warming and also the climate change and everything, growing trees is one of the perfect thing that we all do in some ways. And I thought like maybe I can inspire around 16 villages, which is over here in Ladak. The reason why I choose Ladak is for few reasons. First reason is that here, each and every one is a sort of a dry desert. You know, it's a very cold, dry desert. You know, in a very, very high region. You know, some places are around 5,000 meter above sea level. So majority of the places are between 3,000 above sea level, meters above sea level, and the 5,000 meters above sea level. So in such an environment, you know, there are very, very less people compared to the place. And then even one people might have a very big land in a place. And now the thing is that they don't understand the importance of planting that much of trees. And so many of the fields that they used to grow some crops, now by understanding that there is no profit in growing such crops, they just keep the fields as a barren land, especially the fields around the river. So in a place, you know, in such a place which is really dry desert, at the same time around the river the water is available. So around such a place, I talked and had a discuss with about 16 farmers, and then we came to a conclusion that, you know, if we plant a willow tree, the willow tree is something, one of the wild, colossal and easy growing species over here. So by growing such a trees in a farm, not only help the villagers to earn a bit of money after a bit of livelihood after a while, after like each 3 year, 4 year, 3 year, 4 year, but also it can really be helpful to recover, to heal the planet, to recover the planet from the further destruction, further crisis that happens due to the change of weather, due to the situation of the world. So here I'm thinking to go to such a places where the places are around the river, so that it would be easier for the farmers to get the water, because it's a dry desert. So it's not really easy to plant trees around the mountains. So the reason why I select just 16 farmers over here is that they have the land around the river, and then the river has been flowing from Tibet, and it literally goes even to the Pakistan and few other places. So if our farmers can use the river which has just been flowing to literally grow this willow tree in their farms, then I think that it will really not only help the environment, not only help the farmers, but it will also, you know, create a sort of awareness between the farmers. When they will see the profit that they can earn from the trees, then many more farmers can be inspired. And then those farmers who are able to do things, who are able to plant by their own, who are able to draw some resources to plant some trees, then I think it would really help the whole Ladakh and the whole world in a bigger scale, so that the whole world can be a nice place and a happier place to live, not just for the humans, but for all the animals. Now, this project, I'm not just thinking about like 70, 80 years. I'm thinking about a longer perspective, because if we can literally heal the world, then it can be a suitable place to live, not just for the people and animals who live right now, but for the next and next and next and next generation. Now, the way this project can help is that by growing that specific willow tree, that each 3 years, the tree can grow about 5, 10, 15, even, you know, a bigger willow trees can even grow up to 100 or 200 branches. So to growing such an branches, so each branch is Ladakh is a really cold weather. So people use the branch for the roof. They never cut the chop of the tree completely. They just cut the branch. And in each branch can earn about $1. So if the tree can grow up to like 40, 30, 40, 50 branches, one tree can give the profit about 40, 50, 60 to USD. So even if it gives it just give 45 USD, then in 1 year, one tree can give about 15 USD. So if you grow in one field, if you grow about 100 or 200, then it can not only be able to meet the needs of the family, but they can also, after a while, they can also use the profit that they get from the tree to even for the whole family, because the livelihood over here, the living cost is not really expensive. So I think by growing such a tree, not only give them a hope for the future, but also it can be an example for the rest of the families where we are not working. So here is a bit of Ladakh, as you can see. So the tree that has been grown is just around the river that you can see over there. So in the winter, I was just trying to do some work and then to do a bit of research. And this is particularly between some mountains. And then you can see some trees up there, which has been planted from the water. Otherwise, the water go to west. So this is one of the small river that comes from a small, valley. And then these waters, they come from the right, the ice mountains right up there. So by growing trees, we hope that we can also preserve those ice mountains. Otherwise, if the temperature of the world arises, then we won't have that much of glaciers in the future. Many animals would die, and then those animals won't be able to survive without those icy things. And also the tip that
1 minute left.
Right. Yeah. So to make a sort of a conclusion, let's all, I think it's a very important to keep this wonderful, very in relation with the nature, and try to recover the world, try to recover the earth, so that it can be a wonderful place. We can, when we go in around 50, 60 years, we can leave behind a wonderful place for the whole next generation to live on. If we and ourselves, if we see this much of distraction and crisis because of this global warming and all these things, then what would we leave to those who comes after a while? So this is one of the oldest willow tree, as I can see, which has been they just cut the branches. So this is the leftover. So I really sincerely hope that we can all come together and then, let a sort of an example in few villages, so that the rest of the village can inspire from it and help to contribute the whole world and all the next generations. Thank you. I would like to conclude the talk over here.
Thank you so much, Venerable Nawang. In very harsh conditions in North India, 3,000 to 5,000 meters high, most of us would already have some difficulties to breathe, as I experienced in the Swiss Alps. So, have the courage to do something on planting trees, conserving as income generating, and at the same time helping the environment, the animals. If I may also give this feedback, that it's interesting when we hear about the fire in Australia or other environmental disasters, we hear about the number of dead people or displaced people, but you mentioned the number of billions of animals who die in such bushfires. And that is an expression of your Buddhist holistic view, that we all are one in the planet, and when animals suffer, humans suffer, and the opposite. So thank you for these insights. And that leads directly to the link to Christopher, welcome. Christopher Mbanefo, originally from Africa, but living in Geneva, and leading and initiating, you are an initiator and founder and CEO of Oxï-Zen, a global initiative also linked to climate issues and how to benefit from measures on against climate warming. And so you have the floor to present the CO2 conversion projects, and maybe as we are in the Asia conference part today, you can also highlight links because, to Asia, because it's a global project, but also with Asian arms, so to say. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Christophe. I would like to send my greetings to everybody. And I want to pick up exactly from where my brother left off, that is Nawang, in North India. So we are making a link directly. I commend you for your project, and I think we're all working together in the same direction. So I'll make that link. So let me share my screen if I can. And so we'll be talking about Oxï-Zen. That is the name of the project. And what Oxï-Zen basically is looking at, it's a holistic approach with very precise actions to the challenges that we have. So maybe the first thing we should recognize is that we are really all living on the same spaceship, traveling through space. And we have to really profoundly understand that and appreciate that. And so you see that little picture at the bottom left-hand side, the boat is sinking and people don't realize they're on the same boat. So this is effectively the same illusion or delusion when the Titanic hit the iceberg. While the ship was sinking, they were still having a party up in the first class, not realizing they're all in the same boat. And this is really what we are having. There is a fundamental issue that we have on the planet. If you take all the anthropogenic emissions, that is the CO2 emissions due to human activity on the globe, and you look at what is actually how does the planet, how does Mother Earth handle this? What we have is about 30% is absorbed by all the forests on the planet. 35% is about absorbed by the oceans, which, by the way, are not designed to absorb that much carbon. And what the planet is unable to absorb remains in the atmosphere. And so we have this tremendous imbalance between what we are releasing into the atmosphere and what the planet is able to absorb. And so even this talk that we have about a 50% reduction in CO2 emissions as part of the millennial goals by 2050 is, when you really sit down and you think about it, is nonsensical. Why? Because if we were able to reduce from 100% to 50%, we still have a situation where 30% is absorbed by the oceans, by the existing forests, assuming that we have the same amount of forests in 2050, and we still have a significant amount going into the oceans. And so that does not solve the problem. The example I like to give is your bathtub is overflowing, and all the wise men on the planet come together and say, the solution to stop the overflow of the bathtub is to reduce the tap by 50%. Every child will look at you and say, that's not going to stop the overflow. Simultaneously to reducing the tap, we have to open the drain. And once the outflow equals inflow, at that time, we stop the overflow. So the discussion has to be a balancing of the planet. And so if we're talking about balancing, assuming we can get a 50% reduction, It means that we have to increase the terrestrial carbon sinks, the existing forests and wetlands and the real efficient transformation, that is the sequestration of carbon. We have to increase what we have today by 60%. At that point, the oceans are relieved, which stops the acidification, which is the primary cause of the coral bleaching. And so this is what we should be talking about. How do we achieve a planetary balance? Now, if we are talking about increasing the existing carbon sinks by 60%, it means we need to generate an economic model that supports that. Otherwise, it's an illusion. And so this is where Oxï-Zen comes in. Now, when we look at the other issue, is when we look at the what we call the compliance market, which is the result of the Paris Agreement, they have this thing called the condition of additionality. And what this means is that existing forests are excluded from the monetization possibility due to carbon sequestration. In other words, the CO2 certificates and green credits and what have you that is out there is all based on the condition of additionality, which means that if somebody plants a couple of trees in a parking lot, they can benefit and monetize the carbon sequestration. But if somebody is the stakeholder, the protector of an old primary forest, which is absorbing a huge amount of carbon, they are excluded. That is according to the Paris Agreement. And so if somebody wants to know why the Amazon is burning, why the forests in Borneo are burning, why the forests in the Congo Basin are burning, is because in many ways, the stakeholders there are not able to monetize the forest, i.e. the carbon sequestration due to the forest. The only way they can monetize it is by destroying it, by cutting the trees, selling the wood, and whatever is left, you burn. And then you start growing soya or something else, which is a total ludicrous way of thinking but that is what the current economic system is talking about. And so because of that, there is a voluntary carbon market that is evolving, and that's where Oxï-Zen comes in. So what we are doing is we are creating a platform that allows the CO2 emitters, those people who are looking at ways of reducing their carbon footprint, to link directly with the CO2 converter, which are those that are the stakeholders, the owners of the carbon sinks, and allow that transaction to occur in real time based on the scientific assessment of the amount of carbon sequestration that is happening. And if we do that, we now have the way to monetize existing carbon sinks from terrestrial as well as marine carbon sinks by creating a solution, a way, a proposition where the stakeholders of these forests can directly benefit with the proceeds going directly to them. And so you start having the economic initiative that the people, the owners of the forest have. They can put that forward. That can be linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. It has a positive social impact. The emitters, those who want to reduce their carbon footprint, can align the converters according to the Sustainable Development Goals with their corporate social responsibility statements and pass that on to the investors in order to show them that their ESG criteria are met. So one of the ways we're doing this is that we are measuring using scientific metrics, including satellite data, as well as soil and data and soil analysis, where we work with the leading scientists linked with the University of Zurich, linked to the Restore program, where Google is one of the collaborators and Oxï-Zen is one of the partners in this thing, where we now tokenize every ton of carbon sequestration. We call it a Gaia. So one Gaia represents 1 metric ton of carbon sequestration, either through a terrestrial carbon sink, which is the green Gaia, a marine carbon sink, which is a blue Gaia, or through an industrial process. And several are now being developed, which we can then represent as a white Gaia. So every Gaia, every token is linked to its own database, which has information about who the converter is. It has data from the audit report. It has information on the use of funds linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. And each Gaia represents a unique geolocation, whereby each Gaia has its own satellite image showing where that 1 ton of carbon was sequestered over what period of time, i.e. with a timestamp from 2 over 365 days. So what this means is that each Gaia is unique and cannot be resold or duplicated. And so we, in order to do the transfer, we've got the Gaia tokens here, which represent the carbon sequestration capacity. And these are exchanged for a unique payment token in a direct one-to-one transaction. And so the ecosystem effectively looks like this. I won't spend too much time here, but what it means is that you have an emitter. Let's say, for example, a company that everyone knows, Nestle. We're in Switzerland. So Nestle is an emitter. They can take their fiat currency through an e-exchange, obtain the payment token, which is a KUI. They identify the converters, which can be, for example, a cocoa or a coffee producer in Asia, a rural community, or an agro business. And they can send their payment token over to the converter. And in exchange, the converter, the system sends the Gaia tokens over to Nestle. The community that receive the KUIs can now take the KUIs and go through an e-exchange and convert that back into a local currency. And so what you have is a real-time technical solution to a real problem. And in other words, what you have is ultimately, with the transaction report, all the way from the ESG through to the corporate social responsibility statement to SDGs, you now have a link. 3 examples. This example here, the Green Ethiopia Foundation, is very similar to what Nawang was talking about. This is a project in Ethiopia where they have done a tree planting program of about 15,000 hectares. And this is done as a woman initiative where they are producing the seedlings, which are then passed on to the farming community. They are planting the trees as a way of securing fighting against erosion, okay? And so they are planting these trees to secure the topsoil of areas that are exposed to landslides in the rainy season, etc. Now, this is a project that they are seeking for funds every year. But we did the analysis and said, based on what you have planted and monetizing the carbon sequestration through Oxï-Zen, you can generate between 350 and 400,000 euros. So that project in itself is already self-sustainable. So this is the example.
You have another 2 minutes.
Thank you. And so these are the SDGs that can be achieved thereby. So this is basically the fundamental project that can be duplicated by Nawang in northern India. If we're looking at a country not too far from northern India, Bhutan, there you have a situation where they have the carbon sequestration capacity of between 5 and 22 million metric tons of carbon based on the national forest that they have. Assuming a price per metric ton, they can generate, just with the existing forest, between 129 and over 500 million US dollars or euros in a year by monetizing the carbon sequestration. The last, just very quickly, so when we look at, this is a project, a study that was done by Purdue University, looking at the net yield per hectare for the production of soya in 5 countries. They range from Argentina, $9, USA, $28.62, in Russia, Ukraine, Brazil, $2.03. Now, if we compare that to what is the carbon sequestration monetization potential of a primary forest, this is what we find out. A primary tropical forest can absorb roughly 7 metric tons of CO2 in a year. At a price of 20, you have a net yield per hectare of 140. At a price of 30, it's over $200. So what we can say is where the price is now on the European market, it's about 38 euros, which is close to $40. You are looking at a potential net yield of close to $300 per hectare, at which point the discussion of land usage becomes relevant. And this is exactly what we need to do. Last but not least, and I'll end with this example of the OES program. The OES program stands for Oxï-Zen Youth Education System. What it means is that we start with the 5-year-old children anywhere, and we're using an example of 3 trees. Every child plants 3 trees. These trees are registered in the name of each child and become part of a tree planting program run by either the school district, the regional government, or even if it is a private school linked to private land, it can be done. And this can also represent a program in a church. So it can also be a faith-based community. As the trees grow, they absorb CO2, which can be monetized through Oxï-Zen. And the revenue is then redistributed. And so what you now have is that the first tree can finance the primary school education of a child. The first and second tree combined finances the secondary school education. The first, second, and the third tree combined finances the tertiary and or vocational training of a child. And so we have the possibility to radically transform and provide education to our next generation, which represent our future, and at the same time, increase the carbon sequestration capacity of the planet, and at the same time, provide revenue and empower the disenfranchised brothers and sisters on the planet as we have it today. So I will end on that and hand it back to Christoph.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for this fascinating presentation. Not easy for those who are not familiar, but easy nevertheless, because it's simple, as you said. Instead of generating income from cutting trees, generating income from planting or maintaining existing trees and forests. So with that, we come to the Q&A. Sorry. We have already a number of questions. We have 15 minutes left for that, and don't hesitate to raise questions to all the 3 speakers. Is it the housing project in the Philippines with this private-public cooperation? Is it the planting trees project in North India? Is it the carbon sink and conversion of carbon converters. We have already a number of questions. One is, they are mainly to Nawang. We start with them. Are the trees on private or public land? And how do you deal with land ownership? And maybe we can combine just with the second question was, and what about in other regions of the world? For example, can that model also work in Africa? How much is it bound to this specific climate zone that you're in? Maybe you start with these two first questions.
Sure. Thank you very much for the questions. So my team, the plant that we are planning, the willow tree that we are planning to plant, as I said, that I talk with about 16 families, and they have this barren land that they haven't used for a while. So I talk with them already, and I have 16 of them, farmer families. So by collaborating with them, I'm growing on their property. So it's more like their private field. So yes, I don't need to buy any field to plant a willow tree. I think that's the first. So the second question, so the willow tree, there are few of the willow tree, even the willow tree that grows over here in Ladak, we have like 2 or 3 species, like a slight difference. And then I'm not really sure whether it's a very suitable tree to grow in Africa. To be honest, I've never been there and I don't know the soil condition, but it's a very dry, if you can compare, because of the condition, it's a very cold, dry place. We don't have the moisture. We literally, from the age of 11 till now, I never use a cream on my face while I'm there. But then in Ladakh, when I'm outside Ladakh, no need to use. But when I'm in Ladakh, there is no way that I can skip that. Otherwise, there's going to be a crack on the face. The reason why I'm saying this is that it's totally dry, but still this grows quite fast. The reason why I come up with this willow tree, it grows very fast, and the tree is quite hard, which is why it can be used for the house, for the construction. We have the wooden roof traditionally. So these are the reasons, but then I really have no idea about.
Thank you very much. Maybe I add to that question of Africa that as I worked for 30 years in development programs, we have seen many programs which are very successful in importing plants from other regions, but also very negative examples where when you take a tree which is successful in one region and you transport it to another region and say that is a fast growing and that is hardwood timber, and then it can create a lot of disturbance for the ecosystem. So it needs a very careful study of the specialists, what kind of, if we import plants from one region to the other. That's a big issue, of course, worldwide, to have ecosystems which are consistent. We can just take the other 2 questions briefly, which were also addressed to you, which are somehow combined. The whole issue of transition period, if it takes 2-3 years, what do the farmers in between? They take a loan, they have the costs, or do they have to pay back only after 3 years? And then also, what do they do as income generating in between? So this is the classical dilemma of taking an investment or a loan and having the return only after a certain time. What is your solution there?
Now, this land which has been left over as in barren, so they're not expecting anything from the land in general. But when we plant this tree, we will draw the channels over there so that we will make the water available for the field. So by making this water available for the field, one of the side profit, like as a side effect, is that there is a certain grass that grows which they can use for the cow or this and that, as their family is very much needed. Now they don't have that grass because we don't have enough rainwater. and then they don't do the channel and these things because that costs, and then there's no profit. So with these three, again, one of the another benefit would be in when we finish with this tree, we will have about 88,960 USD as an income for like 3 years, from which we will be used for the first go. We will use about 40,565 as a refunding. So we still have like 48,395 USD, which we will divide it. If we divide it into each 16 families, then in each family gets about 3,024 USD after 3 years. So that is, quite a big amount with which a village, people can pretty much live on for a while. And after refunding the thing, then the whole profit will be for themselves. And I think this would be quite enough for one family to even feed the whole family at the same time, to send their kids to the school. That will be the.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. May I add one question from myself to Joy on the housing project, which is a fascinating cooperation between expected private funds, investments, and then public governmental entities. Now, many investors have the challenge of cooperating with public entities for reasons of political stability. So what happens if the government is changing, when the law is changing again in 10 years and it's a 30 years time period? What the risk management that was mentioned in the last session, how do you deal with that?
If Pag-ibig will already pay Nehemiah for the loan, then Nehemiah is already paid. The risk is finished, because this will just be a short-term project between Nehemiah and Pag-ibig. So it doesn't really matter if the government changes. The fund is still there. It is protected by taxpayers' money. It is also protected by 48 million members. So in terms of risk, it is actually the Pag-ibig taking the risk from its members.
Yeah. Thank you. And if I may add another question to Christopher. In this project, one of the challenges, what I understood from you, is that how to convert the emitters. That means how to convince the emitters that they should step in that project. The legal frame, of course, could help, but what do you do to convince partners like Nestle or an oil company to step in?
Thank you very much, Christoph. It's a very good question, because it's an ongoing challenge. And so what is happening now, what we need to appreciate is, right now, the emission trading scheme globally is estimated at $250 billion. So what does that mean? It means that there are emitters out there who are paying $250 billion up to a year to get a piece of paper. That piece of paper is called a carbon credit or a certificate. Now, when you ask relevant questions, do you know unequivocally how, where, and when this so-called carbon has been absorbed? The answer is no. Then you ask, do you know whether you're the first person buying this piece of paper? The answer is no. They don't know that. So why are you buying that? They say, well, so that we can claim that we are doing something. So you say, okay, really? Now, let me give you this as an option. You can do the same thing plus more. Instead of buying, so it's a bit like, do you want to buy a certificate of a yogurt, or do you want a real yogurt? The price is the same. Most people will say, well, if I have the choice, I'd rather take a real yogurt. Okay, good. That's the Gaia. The Gaia represents the real yogurt, because there you can answer how, where, and when. Now, one of the things we have come up with as an argument is that imagine you have a company that is producing chocolate. If you go to the shop, there's a row of chocolates. All the chocolate manufacturers are competing with each other. Now, one manufacturer claims that this chocolate that we have is carbon neutral. As a matter of fact, the carbon neutral is done through Oxï-Zen, which means that they can put, this is where it becomes interesting, they can put a QR code onto the chocolate that the clients can use a smartphone, read that QR code, and they can see, for example, what the carbon footprint was to produce that chocolate, where it was absorbed, with whom it was absorbed, and including a satellite image showing where that carbon footprint was absorbed. Unequivocally, scientifically verified. Now, this resonates with the client. Oh my God, I can see what is happening. I see the community. As a matter of fact, let us assume that it was absorbed in northern India with Nawang's project with the willow trees, okay? So at that point, you are linking. They can now link directly with the project of Nawang, with the 16 farmers, and they can see a video, they can see this. So that act of buying a chocolate resonates emotionally. Now, if
Thank you.
So that's the element.
Yeah.
But last but not least, if I may just add, the emitter can now link their corporate social responsibility statement to a real project, and at the same time satisfy the ESG criteria of the investors. And by so doing, they can reduce their marketing budget by 50%. Why 50%? That's what I say to them, because you can cut out all the nonsense and the bullshit out of your marketing. So you save money at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. We see in your marketing that you have experience in negotiating with some of these companies. Yes, we come to a conclusion because in a few minutes we start the closing session.
We have a last question for Nawang. Is that possible?
Very briefly, which one was it?
No, it's not a question. It's just only a
remark.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we have to close here because the next session is needed. We need 2 minutes to shift to the next one. Yes, I think I thank you very much for this, and this shows again these concrete examples that the cooperation between the different levels, the regulators, the consumers, the business, and also the faith communities who own the lands, who own forests, who own, so that they can be on different levels partners in that. And I think these are concrete examples that we take further in our cooperation. And with that, I would like to thank you and close this session in order to start in 2 minutes the closing session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All the best.